Sorry to have to cut you off there, Congressman, as we were hitting that break there, but I was just wanted to note that you mentioned the multitude of bad things that are happening, and sometimes I wonder whether that's a disadvantage to the Trump administration or an advantage because it just it stops us from focusing on any one thing that could bring it down.
I agree, and we saw the same thing during the campaign.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take some calls here. Dan, calling from California, Maryland, watching on Free Speech TV. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well. You're here with Congressman Pocan as well.
Cool. So I was just wondering, I'm not exactly completely clear on it, but what do we have in the works of making sure that Americans have health care, whether or not they can afford it? I think that's kind of an important issue. I'm sure you would agree.
I would agree. Congressman?
Yeah, Dan, so, one thing we're doing right now is trying to fight the House Republican in the Trump administration bill that would take health care away from 23 million people and make older Americans pay up to 5 times more for it. We're doing our best to fight that. But, we understand right now the Affordable Care Act has made sure that 20 million people now have access. It's got, protections, or if you have a pre-existing condition, you can get insurance, et cetera, et cetera. We know we've got to refine that and do some improvements on it. But, I think the bigger context of all this whole debate has been bringing us back to a single-payer Medicare for all type system. And we had a press conference last week. John Conyers has a bill, and we have 111 sponsors, more than ever before. In fact, the 111th person was Representative Joe Crowley from New York signing on. And, and he's in leadership. He's a caucus chair for us. So when you look at that, I think what I'm seeing is, we're lifting this debate to the level we should have it lifted to, is that, health care should be a right for every American. And hopefully this will make it a reality because we're going through this period where they're trying to take it away from so many people.
Thanks for the call, Dan. What do you think's responsible for this surge in a number of sponsorships for the single-payer health care bill that you mentioned? Is it the rise of Donald Trump and fear over health care? Was it Bernie Sanders run, a politician who brought it to the forefront, national stage, talking about single-payer health care, and happens to be one of the most popular politicians in the country as a result?
Yeah, it's a combination thereof. I mean, Bernie helped to make it an issue people talked about during the campaign. But I think this whole debate about taking away health insurance and, the problems that still exist through the Affordable Care Act that are correctable, but that they do exist, it's just making people look at health care in a different way and saying, maybe what we should do is just do the simplest thing that every other, democratic country just about has, from Canada to Europe, and that's having a system that works for everyone. And I think that has probably been a big boost. And quite honestly, people being more active than ever. I mean, the activism right now is really unprecedented, and they're reaching out asking us to do this. And I think all those things are having an effect.
Yeah, I've always kind of jokingly thought that, Republicans, you're not going to convince them on single-payer health care. They're in the pocket of the health insurance companies. They're not budging. But someone like Donald Trump might budge on this issue if enough pressure or enough compliments were showered on him, I suppose. I mean, he's a guy who in the past talked about single-payer health care during the Republican primary. He talked about not letting sick people die in the streets. Of course, that was all just campaign rhetoric at the time. But I wonder if there are buttons that can be pushed on Donald Trump to get him to come around on this issue.
Yeah, if he can make a profit off it, that'd be the button.
I bet that would. Let's take another call here. Russell, calling from Hickory Hills, Illinois. What's up, Russell?
Yeah, I got a couple of things real quick. How is Paul Ryan playing in your state? And the big one is, have you thought about running for Senate in 2022? I mean, look at our state. We had Kurt, and we primaried Tammy Duckworth, and look what happened. Now she's our senator. Have you ever thought of running for Senate in 2022?
Yeah, let me take the second one first. Generally, the way I've operated for 23 years is I don't necessarily think about the next office. You think about the one you're in and what you're doing. And I absolutely am so happy to be co-chair of the Progressive Caucus and the work that we do as 74 members of Congress. So that's what I'm focused on right now. To Paul Ryan, let me tell you this. So if there's another congressional district I know almost as well as my own, it's Paul's district. I grew up there. My mom and cousins live there. My classmates from high school live there. My husband's in-laws live there, his parents and other family members. I know the district well, and there just was a poll, and based on generic ballot, 46% said they'd support Paul Ryan, 48% said they'd support a Democrat. So Paul is in trouble, and every time he does a bill like that health care bill, There's 50,000 people estimated in his district, or 49,000 something. I want to be careful how I say it, that could lose health care because of that bill. He's got to be very careful because those aren't prescriptions for Wisconsin or for his district. Those are, neocon ideas that he's out putting forward, and he seems to now do whatever President Trump wants him to. Those are not good recipes for victory in his district in Wisconsin. So I would argue his agenda is putting him in trouble.
Seeing Paul Ryan run out of office would be an incredible development in this. Reminds me of Eric Cantor, although he lost to someone who was on the far right in the primary there. Let's go with let's listen to Stanley calling from Missoula, Montana, where they've got a new congressman up there. Hey, Stanley, real quick, what do you got?
Let me take you off speaker. Yeah, we have a new congressman. This is going to be a hoot in the future. I was going to ask, I personally believe that a single payer, it's a no-brainer, number one. I lived in Canada for 5 years.
Yeah, we've got just about 30 seconds, Stanley. If you could just get to your question for the congressman. Sorry about that.
Okay. The single payer is a no-brainer. The other question is, I think the Democrats and the corporate media need to get on the ball about voter suppression across this country and put an end to it. I don't know how to go about it. Thank you.
Congressman? Voter suppression.
Yep. The first one, I think we already said we agree on. To the second one, there is a lot going on around voter suppression and making sure that people have the right to vote regardless. Keith Ellison and I have introduced a constitutional amendment to guarantee a right to vote that we have the support of people like John Lewis on. So there are initiatives, but if the corporate media doesn't report them, you wouldn't know about it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too hard on the corporate media for beating too much about Russia, because as you said, and as we've established, this is a very serious issue. But, I mean, how many votes were lost in the last election due to voter ID, due to cross-check, and due to other forms of voter suppression that might have changed the results?
Absolutely. Important issue.
Yep. Congressman Mark Pocan, Democrat, Wisconsin's 2nd District, the new co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the best caucus on Capitol Hill. Keep up the good work up there, Congressman. We're relying on you.
Thank you very much, Sam.